Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing 3D monster taming games in a video that I could have sworn I put together in the past. However, I can't find any sort of list like this on my channel, so I guess there was either a glitch in the matrix or I'm going insane. Either way, 3D monster taming games are a common question that I'll oftentimes see people ask about whether or not there are 3D monster taming games that are out and for them to play, or ones that are up and coming and stuff like that. So today we're going to be going over some new and upcoming 3D monster taming games that you should have your eyes on. I'm going to use the term new a little bit loosely here, in that we have games that released this year, yes, but also some that have released in the last 2 or 3 as well. Also do note, if you've been a longtime fan of this channel, you're likely going to see some games you've already heard of. That's why I have the Mon Games You Never Knew segment. This video is more so for people that don't follow monster taming as closely, or for even those who are longtime fans that need a refresher on what's going on. Anyways, all of that being said, here are my 10 picks for 3D monster taming games that you should check out. Alright, first up on this list, and I should have noted earlier that this is in no particular order, but we do have a game that a lot of you may not have heard of, that being Pixel's Digital Creatures, a roguelike monster taming game set in a cyberpunk-esque world where you navigate randomly generated biomes and interact with various tiles, which seems to be inspired by a game such as Slay the Spire. This game honestly has some really nice visuals, and the monster designs are really cool as well. It's definitely, in my opinion, one of the better looking 3D indie monster taming games, and it has pretty typical turn-based combat as well. I might get a little bit of heat for saying this, but I think one of the only factors holding it back from being more popular is the fact that it's a roguelike, because while roguelikes are definitely cool and impressive in their own regard, there does tend to be a pattern with roguelike games getting less recognition in the monster taming genre particularly, and I think a part of that is the fact that people like having a world to explore and progress that saves throughout the game rather than having various run resets. Personally, I've had fun with roguelike monster taming games that I play, but I also do have a massive preference for RPGs and other more traditional titles. I do think you should give this game a chance, however. It's a lot of fun and it's in early access right now. Next up, we have Sky Climbers, a game I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, that is currently slated for early access this year, and essentially the game is supposed to be an open world sandbox with over 400 monsters to tame and collect, city building and management properties, a procedurally generated open world that lets you traverse multiple planets, large-scale RTS-esque war battles, and more. This is definitely one of the most ambitious titles I've seen in terms of the game's scope, especially in the indie scene, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what the final product will look like. Visually, it looks really good, and I think the premise definitely has widespread appeal. The monster taming itself is more so a companion-based system where you can tame the monsters and they sort of fight alongside you, rather than you controlling them directly, but honestly, I'm not preferential to whether or not you can control the monster directly in a real-time monster taming combat game or not. I think both have their pros and cons. Speaking of controlling your monsters directly, a lot of you probably know about Kindred Fates, a monster taming action RPG that's set in an open world where, of course, you can control your monsters directly upon catching them. The game's slated to have 159 monsters, each with their own different personalities. The monsters are going to be far more sapient than your typical monster taming game, which makes them kind of more like Digimon in terms of intelligence. The game will have online multiplayer, a bonding system that makes your monster interactions feel unique, a turn-based mode, some level of balance between all the monsters in the game, making lower evolution stages not necessarily worse than higher evolution stages, just different, branching evolution paths, permadeath in certain instances, house building, and a lot more. The game is definitely one of the more ambitious titles as well, and my brain just kind of melts at the thought of tackling all the different things that are planned. Alright, next up we have a game that is fully out, that being Shin Megami Tensei 5, a title that I can't recommend enough if you're looking for a more mature, complex monster taming title. The game features the iconic Shin Megami Tensei turn-based combat, really fun platforming and traversal in the overworld, a story that, while I've heard a lot of people say it's a downgrade from other SMT games, is still quite enjoyable in my opinion, some pretty nice visuals, especially for the Switch, and more. I really enjoyed this game, and I love the premise of the angels versus demons and all that stuff, and also do consider that this was my first SMT game I ever played, so there's probably going to be bias there, but I think it's a really good game, and I've heard a lot of people say that gameplay-wise it is the best in the series. Now, I was debating putting Monster Rancher on this list, but I wanted to include this lesser-known game that's in the works that is heavily inspired by Monster Rancher, that being Biomancer, a game that honestly looks more visually appealing than most of the Monster Rancher titles in my opinion, and it features a similar monster-raising gameplay loop, with the exception being that instead of the sort of semi-real-time combat that Monster Rancher is known for, this game has turn-based combat. Now, depending on your preference, this might be a positive or negative thing. I will say that the game is early in development, we don't have a release date or anything like that, but I just wanted to put some eyes on it, and if you are a Monster Rancher fan, definitely consider checking them out. The game's gonna include some of the expected features like fusion and whatnot, so it's definitely worth looking into. Okay, next up is a game that I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of, that being Temtem, the monster taming game that kind of kicked off the upswing in the monster taming genre. This is a 3D monster taming MMORPG that plays much like your typical Pokemon game, however, with more in-story content, a double battle system that doesn't feature RNG and also has a stamina and hold system, which prevents players from spamming their strongest moves, online ranked matchmaking, a post-game Battle Frontier-esque facility, and more. There's definitely been some criticism towards Temtem with regards to its MMO features, making it feel kind of more like a single-player RPG with MMO elements, but either way, it does have its very small but dedicated, loyal fan base that has been investing thousands of hours into it. It's definitely one of the best monster taming games if you're looking for something that has a lot of social aspects to it, because most of the games in the genre are indeed single-player games. This is going to be another one that you guys are probably already aware of. However, I could not make a list without including palworld, a sandbox monster taming and shooting game that'll allow you to either be the hero that your pals need or the villain that enslaves, kills, and eats their pals. This game has me really excited because it allows us to explore a side of monster taming that isn't oftentimes expanded upon. You could choose to be good, you could choose to be evil, you could choose to be morally gray, and everything else that comes along with that. I like that the game doesn't just force the hero archetype on the player, which is honestly a breath of fresh air. The game is releasing in early access in January 2024, and while I will say this isn't going to be your typical story RPG or even open world campaign type game like Kindred Fates, this is more of a title like Ark where you can sort of build bases, interact with other players, survive, and stuff like that. And I'm not usually into those types of games, but this one's got me interested. Next up, we have another real-time combat game that allows you to actually take control of your monsters. This one's called Cubers, a title that I've honestly been quite impressed with after playing their alpha, with the gameplay feeling pretty good considering that they haven't had any sort of crowdfunding or anything up to this point. We don't know much about what the single-player campaign is going to include, but we do know that this will be a free-to-play game with a heavy focus on online battles, so I do definitely think it's worth checking out since, you know, it's free. The game looks really good, and again, for the state of development that it's in, it's promising. They do have a plan for an early access release this year, so we'll definitely have to check it out. A very important release this year, at least in my opinion, and I explored this in a separate video, is Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, which is the first Dragon Quest Monsters game in a long time that's actually going to be released here in the West. That being said, this is a 3D Switch game that seems to take its style and aesthetic from Dragon Quest XI and Dragon Quest Treasures that came before it, and honestly, I'm all for it. I thought that those games looked really nice, and the art is just great. Now, there are connections to previous Dragon Quest games here, I believe Dragon Quest IV, but I'm no Dragon Quest expert by any means, so I'll let you fill in those blanks. Essentially, what we know is you're going to play as a character who can't actually kill monsters themselves, so instead they decide to wrangle them and use them to fight each other in order to defeat their dad. And there's going to be all of the fun Dragon Quest storytelling that comes along with that stuff. But either way, I'm pretty excited for this game. I've seen a lot of positive feedback from you guys, so we're definitely going to go all in when it comes out in December. Finally, last but not least, I had to include this because it's Nexomon, and yes, if you didn't already know, Nexomon 3 is set to be a fully open world 3D monster taming game with a brand new combat system that has yet to be revealed, and honestly, we don't have a whole lot of information about this game when it's coming out. We only have actual screenshots, no gameplay footage, etc. However, with what they put into Nexomon 1 and 2, I have no doubt in my mind that they will make a quality product when it does eventually launch. The game is set to take place in the world that was showcased at the end of Nexomon 2, and apparently the old protagonist from Extinction is supposed to make an appearance as an NPC, so we're gonna have to wait and see what a lot of these story implications will be. This is another one that, trust me, I will be covering extensively, and I already have more speculation videos planned, so definitely if you're looking forward to this game and are not subscribed, you should be, because you're missing out. But yeah, guys, all that being said, let me know in the comments if you have any other monster taming games to add, whether or not they're new. Let's just get a 3D compendium in the comment section going on. There are tons of older 3D monster taming games that we've covered in other videos as well, like World of Final Fantasy, Ni no Kuni, Jade Cocoon, Spectrobes, and a whole lot more. So if you are a fan of monster taming games, again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for daily videos. You can check me out on Twitter, Discord, and my Patreon linked below. And special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona Exodus, and Candy Morency. And we'll see you next time. Peace.